We need to get to the bottom of this. What's going on? Where are all the good Junji Ito adaptations? Are they hiding them? Did they like put them in a bunker somewhere and they're just like keeping them locked in the vault and we're not allowed to have them? Like what's going on? Is it a curse? I think it might be a curse. I think there might be a curse. There's like a cosmic entity that like senses when there's a Junji Ito adaptation about to be made and it like smites it on the production floor. Like it's not allowed to be good. I want to talk about Adult Swim Uzumaki. And I want to talk about like Junji Ito adaptations in general because as of right now, it is October 14th. Uzumaki episode 3 just aired 3 days ago. And I was going to wait until Uzumaki was like done airing completely, i.e. next week, to record this. But unfortunately, Uzumaki has like infected its way into my brain like a parasite. Like every time I close my eyes, all I can see is that shot of them running on the beach. It's like playing on loop over and over again in my head. Every time I try to go to sleep, it's that shot. Every time I try to like have a moment to myself where I just sit there, I blink and it's the shot of the kid getting punched. Like I can't stop thinking about the show. I think I need to be lobotomized. It's like it's just in my head and I can't stop thinking about it and it's like a curse and I'm going insane and I need to talk about this because like I feel like I'm going crazy. I go on Twitter and people are like, episode 3 of Uzumaki was actually better than episode 2. I don't know why everyone... What are you talking about? You're crazy. I'm not crazy. You're crazy. Did you watch the same thing I did? I also want to talk about Junji Ito adaptations in general because this is not unique, right? I'm not a big anime person. I know that might be weird because I'm about to talk about Junji Ito for a while, but really I'm more into horror and that's where I get the Junji Ito stuff from. Not that I'm like a big anime person in general. I'm also a big Hatsune Miku person, but that doesn't make me an anime person. Basically, my reach into the world of anime is Junji Ito and Hatsune Miku. That's all I got. I don't watch shows that come out. I don't like read a lot of manga, you know. I get into things occasionally, but I'm not a big anime person. This is all to say that, like, I'm sure this has happened before. You know, I remember that The Promised Neverland had a particularly bad season 2 adaptation. They kind of went off the rails there. But this is unique to me. Like, from my perspective, the fact that there has been 3 Junji Ito adaptations that have come out in the past 5 years, and all of them have been, like, exceptionally bad, and not in the way that it's, like, every anime fan kind of complains when their favorite manga gets adapted, you know, like, I've seen people, like, clowning on the Chainsaw Man adaptation. Dude, what are you talking about? Like, huh? I think if, like... This happens all the time, where a manga gets adapted and then people clown on it. Like, that happens, but... This is not that, okay? The Junji Ito collection, the Uzumaki anime, and yes, Maniac, I'll talk about Maniac, they've all been, like, really bad. Like, in a way that it's even caught the attention of people that aren't even into Junji Ito. Like, they look at the show, they're like, what happened? And I want to get to the bottom of it. I want to figure out why this keeps happening, because I have theories, and I'm going to explain them to you. I hope we're so excited. This video is mostly just me complaining. Like, don't get me wrong. I feel like I do have a point to be made here. I wouldn't have just, like, hit record. But this is a lot of complaining. This is a lot of just, like, me complaining because I, again, feel like I'm going insane. I feel like I'm losing sleep. Adult Swim Uzumaki is ruining my life. And I need to make it everyone else's problem, okay? There have actually been a lot of Junji Ito adaptations, like a lot. There's been... I was going to toss out a number, but whatever number I'm going to toss out, it's wrong. Most of them have been live action, though. There have been a lot of different live action adaptations, some of them more niche than others. There was this one series that, like, adapted a couple of his short stories that's, like, lost media. Like, you literally can't find it. It's not online. It didn't have, like, a physical release or anything. Like, it's gone. And as much as I would really love to, like, delve into all of those, like I said, a lot of these are so niche that, like, I can't find them. They're not online. I can't watch them. So I couldn't really give you much of an opinion on them anyway. And also, like, Junji Ito live action adaptations, they just don't speak to me. Some of the more notable ones would probably be, like, the Tomie film series. people don't talk about this, but there's like 8 or 9 movies in this Tomie film series. It's not like they just adapted Tomie into a movie. No, there's like a bunch of them. Like from 1999 to I believe like 2003, they released like one per year. Like every year there was a new Tomie movie. I think there was 2 released in 2005 alone. Like there's a lot of them. And these movies have like kind of a cult following of their own. Like there is a audience of Tomie film series supporters. It's not me. I'm not particularly into these, and from what I've found, the people that are particularly into these are not usually Junji Ito fans. Like they're just kind of fans of obscure J-horror, and then that's why they're into the Tomie film series, and not because they're particularly into Tomie as a whole. Whatever. There's also the Uzumaki movie. There was a movie of Uzumaki made before the series was finished, actually. Like, the manga was still ongoing by the time that they started making this movie, and so, like, the movie is not a complete adaptation of Uzumaki. I don't remember how far into the series that it gets. I know it at least gets to the Jack-in-the-Box chapter, but that's, like, still not that far into the story. I know it covers the hair chapter, I think. I know it like covers the snails, but it like has to make up its own ending. I haven't actually seen the movie, but I'm actually kind of interested in looking into it. Like it actually has this like really interesting looking visual style to it. Like from what I've seen of like screenshots and stills and whatever, like it actually looks pretty interesting. Like I'm kind of rocking with it. But I don't know. I don't really want to talk about the live action adaptations because they're just not that interesting to me. I want to talk about the animated adaptations, and that's not just because like I'm currently in college getting a BFA in animation. Like that's it's not why. Okay, they're just more interesting. Starting off with Gyo 2012. So, people don't talk about Gyo 2012, and I think that people don't talk about Gyo 2012 because it's not good. Gyo Tokyo Fish Attack. Gyo Tokyo Fish Attack is a 2012 OVA. I honestly, if you asked me to describe what an OVA was, I don't know. Like I said, I'm not really an anime person. I don't know what the difference between an OVA and like a movie is. Is it like release? Is that what it is? Like if it has like a theatrical release, it's a movie, and if it's like a DVD release, it's an OVA? Is that what? I don't know. Anyway, Gyo OVA. I fucking love the Gyo OVA. I love this movie. I love Gyo Tokyo Fish Attack with my entire heart. I love this movie so much. It is ridiculous. Like, I will talk about this more when I talk about my, like, overall theory on why Junji Ito adaptations don't work, but Gyo is weird source material to start with. Even by Junji Ito standards, Gyo is weird. Like, it has a lot of the moments in his stories that, like, have this very specific brand of like nearly goofy. Like a lot of the things that happen in Gyo are deeply silly. Like when you take them out of the context of the story, weird, silly, unserious stuff happening in Gyo. And I think that it works really well in Junji Ito's execution, but just overall weird. And so that combined with the like fuck ass 3D animation, like look at these fish. I love this series. I love this movie so much because of the like bizarre source material combined with this like insane choice in 3D animation. It comes together to form a real artistic masterpiece to me. Okay, when I watched this movie for the first time, I could not stop laughing. Like it was so funny to me, and I don't know why. Okay. I think that this is a reaction that a lot of people have to certain Junji Ito stories, but just the Gyo OVA is so special to me because it is just so absurd. Like, it is so over-the-top absurd. And I personally love it. I don't think it's, like, a particularly good, like, piece of art. Like, if you ask me, like, is it, like, an objectively good series? No. No, it is not. But that doesn't matter because that's not the joy of the Gyo OVA. The joy of the Gyo OVA is this. This is what I love about the Gyo OVA. And honestly, I wish that people considered this one more in their conversation about Junji Ito adaptations because I love the Gyo OVA. I love it so much. It's so stupid. It is a joy to watch this movie. Not because it's like, again, not because it like has artistic value per se. Like, actually it does. It does have artistic value. It's just not like great. In fact, it is quite bad. But that's what I love about it. Like that is what I love about this movie. And I hope that Gyo Tokyo Fish Attack never change. I love you, Gyo Tokyo Fish Attack. However, normally when people talk about Junji Ito animated adaptations, why is there like a dark shadow? There's like the like spirits are like congregating on the desk. Why is there? Anyway, when people talk about Junji Ito animated adaptations, they usually start with the Junji Ito collection. So, the Junji Ito collection. I believe I was in 8th grade when this series aired. It was announced 2017 and then started airing in like the last like few weeks of 2017, mostly aired in 2018. When this was first announced, when there was like an initial announcement that was like, we Crunchyroll did this, Crunchyroll is to blame. When Crunchyroll announced like, we are going to be adapting a bunch of Junji Ito short stories into like an anthology TV show, people were excited. Like, this was an interesting idea because other than like I think it was advertised as like the first animated Junji Ito adaptation, which like I will not stand for this Gyo Tokyo Fish Attack erasure. Why are we not talking about the real trailblazer? Okay, the real piece of artistic Gyo Tokyo Fish Attack arguably inspired all things to follow. Okay, Gyo Tokyo Fish Attack is a cultural touchstone that I think we need to talk about more often, but it was the first mainstream one, at least. It was the first one that a lot of people had heard of. It was the first one that a lot of people watched. And like I said, on initial announcement, I think people were like cautiously excited. Like I remember the Super Eye Patch Wolf video on Junji Ito and like a lot of horror in general. You know, the one, everyone's seen this video. Maybe it's just me, but like everyone's seen this video. In this video, he mentions the Junji Ito collection. He's like excited about it. And I love going back on that video because it's like, oh, you have no idea. You don't even know. You don't know. You're excited for the Junji Ito collection. And I really admire that naivety. Naivete? Naivete?
Naivety.
It was bad. It was comedically bad. Like, I cannot stress how underwhelming the Junji Ito collection is. And I mentioned this in the intro. I don't even mean this in the sense of, like, whenever any fan of, like, a manga gets their manga adapted and then they're, like, bitchy about it no matter what. It's not one of those things. Like, it was really bad, guys. It was hardly animated. For the most part, characters just kind of like were in a pose and then they talked, and then it cut to another character like in a pose and then they talked, and there was a bunch of blatant animation errors. It did give me this clip. I love this clip. I think about this clip every single day. You know how I said, like, when I close my eyes, it's the beach scene from Uzumaki episode 2? Well, in my dreams, whenever my brain decides to give me a reprieve from playing Uzumaki clips, sometimes as a treat, it plays this clip instead. I love this clip. Why does he fall like that? It's really interesting. If you want a more, like, in-depth breakdown of why the Junji Ito collection just fundamentally doesn't work, Super Eye Patch Wolf made a follow-up video. He made a second video after his first video where he, like, expressed, like, optimistic opinions on the Junji Ito collection. He made a second video to follow that up and be like, I was wrong. And I think that video is probably the best way that you can get sort of the experience of why the Junji Ito collection doesn't work. But basically, the bar was set in hell by the Junji Ito collection. I'm just going to call it the collection from now on because that's kind of a mouthful, and I think I've said Junji Ito in this video like a million times already. The collection set the bar on the floor. The collection set the bar in hell, and it was bad. It was very, very bad, and everyone knew that it was bad. People who weren't even into Junji Ito thought it was bad. Like, it was really something to behold. And so After the collection came out and it was absolutely terrible, the next major Junji Ito adaptation was Maniac. Maniac was the name of basically Netflix's take on the collection. So Crunchyroll made the collection where they like chose a bunch of short stories to adapt, and then Netflix did the same thing, but they chose different stories. And the conversation around Maniac is positive. Like people kind of like this series. People talk about it at least more positively than they talk about the collection. And I'm here to say that you guys are wrong. I don't care that art is subjective. I don't care that everyone's allowed to have their own opinions, whatever. No, you're wrong. Okay? You're wrong. Maniac is not good. Maniac is it's not good. It's not good, guys. I think that part of the reason why people have sort of a positive opinion on Maniac is just because, like I said, the collection was so comedically bad that, like, literally anything was going to be better. And so when Maniac came out and it was, like, fine, it looked like a masterpiece in comparison to the Junji Ito collection. You know, it had animation. That's really good. I do like when an animated show has animation. It didn't have blatant animation errors. That's a plus. That's an improvement. We're really getting some. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that it was the bare minimum. Maniac, to me, not good. I think that in terms of like structural issues, it has a lot of the same problems that the collection did. Like, first of all, the coloring, bad. I don't like Junji Ito's art colored. I think that even when he does the coloring, like he does this on his own art sometimes. Like he'll do like these like color pages, and even when he does it, I don't really like the color. Like I think that it's definitely better like in his illustrations, but both Maniac and the Junji Ito collection both have this problem of just looking so gross. Like, I know it's a horror series, and I know that we're not going for, like, pretty, aesthetically pleasing art, but, like, there are ways to do horror color schemes that aren't just, like, using very basic colors and then turning the saturation way down. Like, everything looks really muddy. It just looks bad. Like, it looks really uninspired. You know, in Junji Ito's art, when he colors his own art, it's not particularly desaturated. I don't know. I think that color in Junji Ito is just weird in general. But Maniac also had a lot of the same issues in terms of, like, it just looked a little stilted all the time. The story collection of Maniac, weird. Okay, I will be the first to say it. Weird choices being made. I think that maybe it's because they didn't want to, like, step on the toes of the collection. Like, I think that they must have been, like, deliberately trying to avoid covering the same stories that the collection did. Which is bad because the collection basically got all of the iconic stories out of the way. So then, like, Maniac, I guess, had to pick, like, second-tier stories. Like, the ice cream truck? What? Why were they like sitting there and they were like, you know, we should adapt the ice cream truck? Like, what are you doing, guys? I know that the collection did Glyceride, the collection did Slug Girl, the collection did Fashion Model, and I think it did Long Dream. And like, I know that a lot of the like most popular, most iconic stories were covered by the collection, and so like maybe Netflix just didn't want to do what was already done, but like, come on, right? Some of these stories, like Layers of Terror and The Thing That Drifted Ashore, and there's a big one, Hanging Balloons. I think that those are all really good choices, but then we also have, let me look it up, because there was some of them that I don't even remember. That's how you know it's good, when I literally don't remember the episodes. Hang on. Yeah, The Bully is a weird choice. Why do we keep adapting Suichi stories? Why? We did it in the Junji Ito collection too. Why? Is that, I thought that was like a general consensus among like Junji Ito enjoyers that like the Suichi stories were like why are these always like the first choice ones? Why? What is the reason? What is the Sandman's lair? like, I don't remember half of these stories that are listed in the Maniac episode guide. And I watched the show. And I don't even remember them. Like, weird story choices in Maniac. I don't know. Basically, I think that Maniac is serviceable. Like, it's fine, but I think you're really doing yourself a disservice by like experiencing Junji Ito through Maniac. Like, at that point, just read the stories. Like, if you're that interested, just read the stories and you'd have a much better impression of it. Whatever. Anyway, we skipped a little bit in the timeline. Junji Ito Collection was released 2018 and Maniac was released 2023, I want to say. We skipped over something. We skipped over the first teaser for Uzumaki Adult Swim, which was announced in, I think it was summer of 2019. I was in high school, and guys, we need to talk about Adult Swim Uzumaki. This is kind of like the whole reason that I started recording this video, because I just have such strong opinions on Adult Swim Uzumaki. So we need to like set the stage here. We need to understand why this affected me so deeply. So, 2019, I am already into like, I was gonna say I'm already into Uzumaki, but I'm into Junji Ito in general, right? I was a weird kid. I've always been into horror. And I think I really started like getting into Junji Ito maybe like 2017-ish. And by the time that the Adult Swim Uzumaki teaser came out, we were pretty fresh off the Junji Ito collection. Like, it had been about like less than a year since the collection aired, and everyone was just so put off by that. Like, it was really bad, guys. And so when the Adult Swim teaser happened, this was like Christmas to a lot of people. Uzumaki, obviously, if you don't know, I don't know why you'd be watching this video if you don't know, but Uzumaki is probably like Junji Ito's most popular story, right? Like, it is a story that is very popular even outside of like horror manga circles, even outside of anime circles, like just in the horror zeitgeist in general. People know about Uzumaki. When you ask someone about horror manga, Uzumaki, like, it is extremely well known. Okay, I think that it is one of his stories that works best in an adaptation. Like, if any adaptation is going to work, it's gonna be Uzumaki. And not to mention, like, what little animation that we got in that little teaser looked really good. Like, it looked like exceptionally good. There was also really like exciting names attached to the series. I'm not big in anime circles, but I know that people are really excited about the director, Colin Stetson. Guys, like, there was interesting production team going on here. The little bit that we could see looked good. Like, you have to know, we are coming off of this like famously terrible adaptation in the form of the collection, and then this teaser comes out and it's like, oh, this will save us. This will be what we wanted from the collection. It's finally coming to us in the form of Adult Swim Uzumaki. Now, this teaser came out in 2019. You may remember, with your incredible memory, that at the beginning of this video, I said that it is October 14th, 2024, and episode 3 just aired. Uzumaki Adult Swim was in production for 5 years. And, you know, in the time that between Uzumaki being announced and Uzumaki being released, I, like, went through my entire high school career. I was a freshman in high school when Uzumaki was announced. I'm currently like a second year in college. Like, it's been a while since since like the initial announcement for Uzumaki and the release of Uzumaki. And in those 5 years, there was like 2 trailers. I know there was one released like 2021, 2022-ish. There was another one released that like gave like an actual announcement date for 2024. I think that it was initially supposed to be in 2020, and then they pushed it back in like February of 2020. They were like, JK, it's getting postponed. And then there was like silence for 2 years, and then they were like, okay guys, we're gonna release it in 2023. And then the end of 2023 came and went, and they said nothing. And then they were finally like, it's gonna air September 24th or something like that, 2024. Basically, what you need to know is that there was 5 years worth of hype, and people weren't even really upset about it. Like, that's the really important thing, is that, like, even though it was taking literal years for anything to come out about this, it's not like people were like a cartoon character, like, sitting there, like, tapping their foot, looking at their watch, like, what's going on here? People were patient, you know? Like, every time that we got a little bit of a glimpse of what this series looked like, it looked gorgeous. Like, it was really faithful to Junji Ito's art style, which, like, I am very much a supporter of the idea that, like, you don't need to be 100% accurate to be a good adaptation, right? I think that a lot of people say that certain book adaptations are bad because it's, like, slightly different from the original. I don't think you need to be 100% accurate to be a good adaptation, but, like, the way that his style has been translated historically, i.e. the Junji Ito collection, I think it was really refreshing to see such like a like on point representation of what his style looks like. It looked very fluid. Like I said, a lot of the names in the production was really interesting. Like, there was a lot of reasons to be very excited for this show. And when it finally aired in that beautiful September night, it was good. It was good, guys. Uzumaki episode 1, like, when it aired, the reaction wasn't, oh, we waited 5 years. The reaction was like, this is why we waited 5 years. It was gorgeous. You know, I feel like I can't put too many clips up because I don't want to get like copyright smited into oblivion. But like, I adore the way that this show looks. Like, everything is so like uncannily fluid. Like, the way that the characters move, it's very much like somewhere between being like rotoscoped and like 3D animation. I don't know what the technique they used here exactly is, but like, it looks just a little weird, and in a way that I really, really like. You know, like, I think that it is a horror series. It's supposed to be kind of off-putting. It makes sense that the characters move in like a slightly uncanny way. Like, everyone just kind of floated through poses in a way that was like so interesting to watch. You know, there was a lot of like little character details. Everything looked great. You know, like, when Uzumaki episode 1 aired, the reaction was like, you know what? I'm not even mad. I'm not even mad we waited for 5 years. You know, you wait for 5 years, you get something like this. This is why we waited 5 years for this. Like, there was such a positive conversation around Uzumaki episode 1. Now, I remember when the first episode aired, I had one qualm. I had one issue with it, and it's that I thought that the structure was a little weird. Like, the way that the original Uzumaki is, like, the story is very much still like a short story collection. Like, for Junji Ito, short stories are kind of his bread and butter. Like, I think a lot of people that aren't super familiar with his work are kind of under the impression that he's like, you know, mostly known for stuff like Gyo and Tomie and Uzumaki that are these like longer stories, and that he just like happens to do short stories. No, his short stories take up like the majority of his body of work, and even within the like longer form stories, a lot of the most popular ones are just kind of short stories with a common main character. Like, there are very few Junji Ito stories that I would say are truly and honestly like long form stories. Like Black Paradox, I would say, is a example of this. But something like Uzumaki, right? Each chapter is kind of its own contained thing, right? Like, if you wanted to, you could just pull the Jack in the Box chapter and just like show it to someone without the context of the rest of the story, and they'd probably still enjoy it. Like, it's understandable even without the context of the rest of the story. And it continues like this for basically the first 2/3. I'd say that the ending of Uzumaki is definitely something that you need to like read the last few chapters in order. Like, they build off of each other really well. But, you know, I really love the structure of the original Uzumaki. I love how, like, a lot of the incidents in the beginning of the story are very much like contained, right? Like it's Shuichi's dad, it's Shuichi's mom, it's Azami, right? Like it's these characters that are very close to the main characters, and it's like these very specific incidents, and as the story goes on, it spreads outwards, right? Like it starts to become these larger problems that affect people that they don't even know. It's like these, you know, town-wide problems. It's problems with the weather, right? Like it gets larger, you know, like a spiral. And I do really love that structure of the original story. And I thought it was a little weird how they were going about it in the anime. Basically, the way that they were doing it was that, like, instead of isolated incidents happening one by one, they were like overlapping, right? Like at the time that the shit with Shuichi's dad was happening, the stuff with the Zami was also happening, like at the same time. And I thought that was a little weird, but I understood why they did it. Like, they only had 4 episodes. You know, you can't have like 1 episode per chapter. Obviously, that's not going to work. And I thought that it kind of almost gave like a new perspective, almost like this idea that it felt more like all-encompassing, I guess, where in the original story it starts as more of like a domestic horror and spreads out to be this like existential, crazy Lovecraftian thing. But you know, with the anime, it felt a lot more like overwhelming. I think almost, it was in a good way. Like in episode 1, I thought that the structure was a little strange, but I understood why they did it, and I was willing to look past that as like my only complaint. Okay? That was Uzumaki episode 1. It was good. It was really interesting. I think it was really promising. I like Uzumaki episode 1. I still like Uzumaki episode 1. So, recap, 5 years of production from when the original teaser was released to Uzumaki episode 1. Uzumaki episode 1 gets released. It's gorgeous. People have been waiting for 5 years and they're not even mad about it. Like, it looks great. So, you need to understand the life-ruining, like, literally, I called my friend the next day after episode 2 aired, and I told her, I was like, do you want to hear the worst thing that has ever happened to me? Like, I cannot overstate how deeply existentially disappointing that episode 2 was. Episode 2 aired, and it had a different director. It had a different, like, team entirely. It had a different studio animating. It was a completely different production team. And you could tell. Like, when you've seen clips of Uzumaki episode 2, like, kind of passed around Twitter, it's, you know what I'm talking about, okay? I talked about this stupid fucking beach scene. The conclusion to the Twisted Lovers chapter, it looked like facade. Like, I don't know what was going on, okay? Like, when I watched this live, I remember I thought that I was hallucinating. Like, I thought that I was, like, so scared that it would turn out bad that I was, like, hallucinating a worse show because I was just, like, anticipating something bad, and so I was, like, manifesting it into reality. I thought that's what was happening, but that's not what was happening. Like, I think that the moment that tipped me off that something was off about episode 2 was the hair chapter. Okay, in the original manga, the way that the hair is illustrated, it looks like it's in like this like constant motion, like almost like a Medusa effect, right? Like it's supposed to be hypnotizing. Like that's literally the point of it. And in the anime, the hair is static. It doesn't move. It is a stilted 3D model. It's not even like, it's not animated. It is a 3D model that stands there, doesn't do anything. And I remember I thought that was so weird because if you remember, one of the things that I liked most about the first episode was like the weird fluidity, is that the word? the weird like fluid motions of everything like it moved like water almost, like these characters just kind of floated into poses, and like it was uncanny, but in a way that worked really well for a horror series. Like, it looked a little off, but in a way that made sense, right? Not the hair stood flat, it stood frozen, it was still. And I remember that was the thing that like made me realize like there's something going on here. And then obviously the twisted lovers thing did not help. But I remember I was like literal seconds after the episode finished airing, I was like scrolling through Twitter trying to see if I was insane. Like, I thought I was going crazy. Like, I was looking through this because all I saw was people that were like live tweeting the series, and you could tell that they were the kind of people that had like no experience with Uzumaki, and this was like the first time that they were experiencing the story, because like most of the tweets that I was seeing like seconds after the episode aired were just people being like, oh, this is so fucked up, like that, like no offense to them, obviously, like, duh. But it was a lot of people that, like, obviously they weren't familiar with Junji Ito, and this is the first time that they were experiencing the story, et cetera, et cetera. These are actually a lot of the same people, I think, that enjoy Maniac, but whatever. I thought I was going crazy until the next day, when most people weren't staying up until midnight to watch this. I was, granted in my time zone, it was like 11:30, but still, like, I was watching the episodes live, and most people weren't. So most of the discussion happened the next day. And that's when I realized I wasn't insane. I wasn't crazy. Like, it was bad. It had taken this like weird nosedive. Like, people were putting up clips from episode 1 compared to episode 2, and it's just, and then here we are. Episode 3 aired like 2 days ago, and I've seen some discussion and people being like, well, it's bad, but it's better than episode 2. No, guys, you have Stockholm syndrome. Guys, no. No. Uzumaki episode 3 is also bad. I'm sorry, it is. There's so many like blatant animation errors on the level of the Junji Ito collection. Like, there's this one part where it's like in the hospital and the women are like standing over the doctor, and there's like one shot where like the arm just cuts off. Like, obviously like the model just wasn't finished. There was a part towards the end with the Jack in the Box thing, which, by the way, weird place to put the conclusion of this. I'll talk about this more like after this, like why I think the structure isn't working at all. But there's a part at the end where he like jumps at them and then he like falls over and the spring just disappears. Like, it just vanishes. I'll show you the frame by frame here. There's a part where Kiri like looks up and her face moves faster than her hair does. There's the part where Suichi's mom like falls over and it just looks like a 3D model that they put in a pose and then like rotated it. There's the parts where all the characters are like sitting down and then they stand up, and it's like there are so many moments that it's like I almost feel like I'm nitpicking almost, right? Like, some of these only happen in like a frame or two, but it's noticeable. It's noticeable, and it's noticeable to the point that like I feel like the people in my like freshman year like 3D animation class last year probably could have done something better. Like, it is shockingly bad. And it's not just the look either, right? Like, the whole series at this point, again, looks like facade. Like, I think that there is a lot of really weird stilted 3D animation happening here, but the structure is also just all off. Like, I mentioned that in the first episode, I was already like a little terrified, not terrified, but I was a little like concerned about the choice to sort of like stagger the stories instead of doing them one by one, although I understood why. But, I think that they at least made it work, like sort of in the series of events that things happen, it kind of makes sense. But by the time that we get to episode 3, it's like, what are we doing, guys? What is going on? Why did they stretch out chapter 2 for so long? Why? The thing with Suichi's mom happens in the second chapter of the manga, and like, at this point, we're like halfway through the story and her story still hadn't concluded at this point. Like, they stretched out that chapter for like 3 episodes. And the emotional through line, like, I feel like I keep saying this, but I'll talk about this in a second. I think that Junji Ito is not a character writer. Like, I think that a lot of his stories have, you know, you're not really supposed to like the characters in Junji Ito's stories. Like, the characters are just sort of a vessel for the story to happen through. But I think that Uzumaki at least has like some coherent character arcs, right? Like, I think it is very important that Suichi loses all of his ties to this town extremely early. Like, I think a very important part of his character is that other than Kiri, he truly does not have a reason to be here, right? Like, there's almost like this like comedic aspect to the fact that like it's almost like Suichi's the only self-aware character in a slasher story, right? Like, he's the only one that is like completely fully aware that like they need to leave. And since both of his parents die so early, not only is he like intimately aware of this threat very early within the story. Like, a lot of the other characters have this sort of plausible deniability that it's like, you know, they're almost in denial that it's happening. But with like Suichi, again, both his parents die in the first chapter, right? Like, he's intimately aware of this. Like, this threat is extremely personal to him. And also it kills off any other reason that he would have to be here besides Kiri, right? Like, I think that the fact that both his parents die so early is very important. Right? I think that it informs a lot of the things that he does throughout the story. I think that it makes a lot of sense within his character arc. I think it just fundamentally doesn't make sense that we kept his mom alive for so long, especially because we didn't do anything with her, right? Like, it's not like we did some like funny little structure things to like introduce her into more sections in the story. We didn't do that. So why was she here? Where they put the conclusion to the Jack in the Box chapter? Crazy. Okay? Even just in terms of, like, a normal, like, plot, right? Like, a normal, like, exposition set up, like, rising action, conflict, falling action, resolution. It doesn't make any sense. Okay? Literally, this scene comes out of nowhere. Like, they're literally running out of the building after the conclusion to the pottery thing, right? Which, by the way, that was like super skimmed over, but they're like running out of the building after that happens. And then you don't even get a second to like breathe. You don't get a second to inhale. And then we're randomly inserting the Jack in the Box kid. Like, it just feels so random where they put it. It makes no sense. And then the episode just ends. Like, it is so out of nowhere. And I feel like people that are watching this for the first time and they haven't read the manga, it's gonna feel even more weird. It's gonna feel even more, like, truly out of nowhere. Like, I feel like if you're watching this without the context of the manga, it's like, well, who even is this kid? Like, what? This happened like forever ago. Why are we on this? Like, 4 other things have already happened. Why are we going back to this? Like, I think episode 1, Frankenstein 4 chapters, I want to say. Yeah, that seems about right. I think that the first episode, Frankenstein 4 chapters. The 3rd episode, I don't have exact numbers, but I think that the hospital arc itself is about 3 chapters, I think. Don't quote me on that, but I think that we'll just throw out the number 3. We have the conclusion to the lighthouse chapter, that's 4. We have the Jack in the Box chapter, that's 5. We have the thing with the pottery, that's 6. The thing with the storm, that's 7. The beginning of the row house things, that's 8. Like, maybe some of these were in the same chapter in the original story, but even like give or take, like 8 different plot lines happening within this one episode. Like, it's nonsensical. It is sensory overload. It does not work. I don't care. It doesn't work. I think that there are ways that we could have made sense of this. This is not it. I think that it honestly might have required cutting a few of the stories. Like, if I was the showrunner, right? Like, if I was head script writer. If it was my job to figure out how to fit Uzumaki into 4 episodes, I would probably cut some stories. I would cut some. Okay? I'm sorry. Like, I think that it is necessary that I would have cut a few things. You know what I would have cut? I would have cut the hospital chapters. Okay? I'm sorry. I am a hospital chapter hater. I think that the whole thing with the mosquitoes and the reverse birth and the placenta mushrooms, all of that, I don't, it's my least favorite part of the original story. I don't think that it makes a lot of sense in terms of like the overall like spiral theme. I feel like we're really stretching it there. I feel like this is just like a fucked up idea that we just kind of had to put in there. I don't know. I don't really like the hospital chapters. That's just my personal thing. But like if I was going to like definitely try and fit this into 4 episodes, I would keep Suichi's mom dying at the beginning. Like I said, I think that that is very important to sort of the way that his character works. I think we need to keep that at the beginning, and I would cut the hospital chapters. I'm sorry. I would cut the snail chapters, but the snail chapter comes back later, so we can't cut the snails. But I don't know. I feel like some cuts were necessary. And I don't know. I could talk about why Uzumaki doesn't work for a while, and I have, but I want to go back to that initial question of like, why does this keep happening, right? Like, why do we keep getting shitty Junji Ito adaptations, and like, what is the overall problem? In terms of Uzumaki, I think it's the curse. I think it's the curse of Ra. I think I think it's the Pharaoh's curse that's like stopping Uzumaki from being good, because Uzumaki doesn't have an excuse, right? Like, Uzumaki was good. I think the reason that Uzumaki is so like personally insulting is because we got a version of it that was good, right? Like, we got a version of the story that was good and it made sense and it worked, and then they took it away from us. Right? Like with Gyo Tokyo Fish Attack, yes, it's bad, but it's not like it gave us a really good movie for the first like 10 minutes and then just took a random nosedive for the rest of it. Like, it was just bad throughout, and I can get some sort of enjoyment out of that. But with Uzumaki, it's like something died here. Like, I feel like I'm mourning a good show. Whatever. Why does this keep happening? Why does this keep happening? I think that Junji Ito is fundamentally hard to adapt. I think that this is a structural problem. I think that this is something that, unfortunately, I don't think it has an easy solution. Like, I think that there is a structural issue in adapting Junji Ito stories, and I think that it's a few things. First of all, a lot of Junji Ito stories, fundamentally goofy, okay? I talked about this with Gyo, but a lot of his stories have these elements in it that could almost be read as comedic, right? Like, they're so over the top crazy that they can be read as comedic, right? This happens a lot with Hanging Balloons. Some people will say that Hanging Balloons is the scariest thing they've ever read. Some people will say that it's hilarious, right? And some visuals in that story, kind of funny, okay? I will be straight with you. But the way that Junji Ito illustrates and the way that he structures his stories, and again, his art doing a lot of the heavy lifting here, but he takes these concepts that definitely could be seen as silly, and he makes you take them seriously. Okay, Slug Girl is a fundamentally silly concept, right? This girl turns into a slug. That's kind of funny. But the way that he presents it and the sort of reality and weight that he gives to his art makes it work. I think a lot of his art is so good because it feels real, right? Like, it feels, the way that he draws skin stretching and the way that he draws like the distortion of the human form. I think that it keeps enough realism within it that it doesn't read as silly, because it feels like, oh my god, this is something that, like, I can feel this happening, right? I think that that's sort of the problem with a lot of his stories, that the concepts in a vacuum are goofy, and it's just because Junji Ito's art works so well, that's why they don't read as goofy within his stories, right? I think, like I said, Gyo, silly stuff happening, okay? Really unserious stuff happening in Gyo, but because his illustration work is so good, it sort of forces you to take this seriously, and it gives it like a reality and a weight that makes it work. And so when we have stuff like The Collection and Maniac that just fundamentally isn't able to do that, Like, it isn't possible to adapt a lot of this in the way that Junji Ito drew it in the original story, because we're sort of forced to simplify for animation and we're forced to do all this stuff. It automatically, it makes it a lot harder to shake that silly aspect to it, right? I've said before that Hanging Balloons is one of those chapters that some people will say that it's the scariest thing they've ever seen, and some people will say that it's like really funny. I've seen a lot more it's really funny approaches to the episode in the anime, right? I think a lot of people agree that the anime episode is kind of hilarious. Like, it is kind of really funny. Again, the fuck ass 3D models just keep coming back, okay? They're in Hanging Balloons too. But this just keeps happening. This keeps happening, and I think that's part of it. I also think that, like, Junji Ito's character work is also not great, and I don't mean this in an insulting way, because I think in his original stories it's not really a problem. I think that this happens a lot in horror, where, like, the characters are sort of inconsequential to the actual story itself. By the way, I don't know what order I'm uploading these videos in, but assuming that this one hasn't come out before my internet horror timeline video, I'm here to say that I am the number one person. I am the number one supporter of the Baraska Q Code podcast. And if you are looking for a piece of horror that is really character focused and has a lot of really meaningful character moments while still including it within a horror context, you should listen to Baraska. At this point, I think that like I should be hired as like the number one Baraska shiller, Shriller guy who makes you buy things. Whatever. Basically, a lot of horror, the focus of it is more on the events rather than the characters. And Junji Ito is definitely no different. Like, for example, Glyceride. By the way, why is it always called greased? Like, is that a new thing? Is that like a new translation that it's called greased in English now? Because I remember people used to only call it Glyceride. I call it Glyceride. It's the grease story, right? Like, why does everyone call it greased? I don't know. Anyway, Glyceride. I don't remember any of the characters in Glyceride. I don't remember their names. I can't tell you a single trait of the main character. I know that she exists. That's about it. I don't know like anything about her, but you don't need to, right? Like, the point of Glyceride is that it's gross as hell. You remember the events of the story, right? Like, you remember that weird pimple scene, okay? You remember that. You remember the, like, dad chopping his leg off at the end and his blood is grease. Like, that's what you remember in Glyceride. You don't remember the characters, and that's fine. But I think that in translation, where we're already losing his art, like, the lackluster characters are like a little more noticeable. Again, this isn't like a knock on Junji Ito at all. I think that his characters work perfectly fine within the context that he puts them in the original stories, but when we adapt them, sort of the paper thinness of it all like sort of shines through a little bit more. I don't know. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that a lot of Junji Ito's stories only work because his execution is so good, right? Like, Junji Ito's stories work because Junji Ito did them. And so when we have these, like, adaptations, he's not doing it anymore. And it's just like, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And I would go out on a limb and say that I don't think that we're ever gonna get like a really, really great Junji Ito short story adaptation. Like I said, if anything was going to work, it would have been Uzumaki. I think that Uzumaki has one of the most interesting character arcs that he's done. I think that Uzumaki has a lot of, yes, there are silly things that happen. The snail chapter is definitely one of them. But I think it has the most like traditional horror scares to it. I think that if anything was going to work, it would have been Uzumaki, and it didn't, so whatever. I do a lot of complaining, don't I? You may ask, well, what would you do? Okay, if you were given an unlimited budget, and you were given a choice of whatever team you want, and you were in complete creative control, and nothing was going to happen, what would you do? I'm so glad you asked! Okay, Enigma of Armigara Fault. That's what I would do. I would do a short film. You know, I think that we shouldn't do TV shows. We shouldn't do a movie, okay? It is genuinely a miracle that any TV animation ends up being good, okay? If there's one thing that I've learned, like, again, going to school for animation and like doing a bunch of research on the industry and all that, if there's one thing that I've learned, it's genuinely a miracle that anything good gets made ever. Like there are just so many things that can go wrong with TV animation specifically that like no, we're not doing that. Okay. We're not, there's too many factors there. There's too many things that could go wrong. No TV animation and no movie either. Because I think that, like I said, if any of his long form stories were gonna work, it was gonna be Uzumaki, and it's too soon to do another Uzumaki. So no movie. Short film. Okay, more control, less factors. There's less to keep track of. There's less that can go wrong. We're doing a short film, okay, and it's going to be Enigma of Army-Garfault. I don't know why Enigma of Army-Garfault hasn't been adapted yet. Maybe people are too scared. In my opinion, Army-Garfault is probably his most popular short story, at least from my perspective. People love this story. I think it's really iconic, and I think it's weird that it hasn't been adapted yet. So we're doing a short film, and we're doing Enigma of Army-Garfault, and we're going to get the same production team from Uzumaki episode 1. Okay, we're just getting all those guys, and we're copy and pasting them over, and they only have to make one episode. Okay, it's only going to be about, like, 20 minutes long. It's not going to be long. It's just going to be, like, basically the length of, like, one episode of a TV show, but it's not going to be a TV show because there's too much happening in TV shows. It's just a short film. Okay, it's just Enigma of Army-Garfault, and we're going to have the Uzumaki episode 1 production team work on it. And maybe we'll add like a few extra scenes that are like little character moments. Okay. I think that Enigma of Army-Garfault has like enough character work in it that I think it works regardless. But if we're going to extend it at all, we're going to add character scenes. Okay. No new crazy lore. All right. I don't want like, I don't want an explanation as to why this like, cavern? I don't know. I don't want an explanation as to why this rock thing does this. Okay. I don't want lore. I want character moments if we're going to add anything. And that's it. Okay. We're going to release a 20-minute short film of Enigma of Army-Garfault, and it's not going to go wrong because there's only like 20 minutes worth of animation that we need to do. Okay. Like it's small scale. Okay. We're not even leaving room for things to go wrong. We're not going to let that happen. It's just going to be that, and then we're all going to move on, and we're all going to like clap and cheer because it's going to be good because Uzumaki episode 1 was good, and we don't even have another 3 episodes to ruin it. Okay, Uzumaki episode 1, I can't even enjoy Uzumaki episode 1 anymore because in the back of my head I'm like, but it gets bad. So we're not doing that. We're just doing 1 episode, and that's it. And then we're going to move on with our lives, and we're never going to adapt Junji Ito ever again. That's my pitch, okay? We're going to do 1 good adaptation, and then we're going to move on. We're never going to adapt Junji Ito again, and it'll be fine. So if anyone wants to give me money to do that, much appreciated. I would love that. Dude, my hands are like numb right now. My God, I feel like I wear this sweater in like every video, but I don't know. It's freezing in here. Like yesterday, it was like almost 70s, and over the weekend, it was like actually kind of warm out. Like it was like almost hit 80s. I'm in Chicago, so like the Midwest weather is kind of crazy in general, but it was like almost 80s like during the weekend. I woke up this morning, 45 degrees out, and like the building hasn't turned the heat on yet because it was literally hot out like 3 days ago. So it's freezing in here. And I don't know what to do about it. So I'm wearing the sweater now. Whatever. I don't really have a point to this little addition here. I just don't know how to wrap up a video. I don't think I'm going to update this. If I truly have any extra points to make, because I'm sure I'm not going to be done editing this by the time that Uzumaki episode 4 comes out. If I truly have anything to say about it, I guess I'll put like a little insert. But I can't imagine that my opinion's going to change very much. I heard some rumors that like episode 4 had the same production team as episode 1, but then I saw the the episode preview, and no, no, no. It's not looking good, guys. It is not. There's one thing I can say to describe Adult Swim Uzumaki, it's that it is so over. It's so over. Anyway, I hope we enjoyed this. I'm gonna sleep forever. I'm so tired. I'm so tired. Maybe there'll be a good adaptation one day. You know, maybe we'll have a good Junji Ito adaptation, and I will eat my words. I will print the entire script for this on a cake, and I'll eat the cake. I'll do it. I'm so tired. I'm so tired.